A little girl's excited shriek cut through the autumn air. "Daddy! That's my brother. The millionaire." James Whittaker froze. The words hitting him with the force of a physical blow. He and his daughter were on one of their cherished weekend walks. A quiet ritual that had become his anchor since his wife, Claire, passed away from cancer. James had poured everything he had into raising Emily alone. And this little girl, now his whole world, was tugging at his hand, her small finger pointing insistently toward a path in Central Park. "Daddy! Look! That's my brother. He looks just like me. And like you." James stopped in his tracks, his blood running cold. "Emily, what did you just say?" he asked, his voice low and tense as he narrowed his eyes. She spun around to face him, her pink dress swishing around her knees, her cheeks flushed with a certainty that baffled him. "That boy," she insisted, pointing again. "Over there, sitting by the fountain. He's my brother." James turned, his gaze following her finger. A small boy, no older than 5, sat huddled on the cold edge of a concrete bench. He clutched a battered cardboard box to his chest as if it were a precious treasure. His clothes were torn and smudged with dirt, and his shoes were barely holding together. But it wasn't the poverty that stunned James into silence. It was the boy's eyes, a bright, piercing blue. The exact same shade as Emily's. The same shade as his late wife's. "Emily, don't say things like that," James said, struggling to keep his voice calm. "You don't have a brother. You only have me." "No, Daddy. I know it," she insisted, her eyes wide and serious. "That's my brother. I feel it." James frowned, a knot tightening in his stomach. This wasn't some childish fantasy. The boy's eyes. He couldn't ignore the startling resemblance. The shape of his nose, the soft curve of his cheek, it was all hauntingly familiar. His heart began to pound against his ribs. The boy was now staring back at them, his expression silent and cautious. But his gaze didn't waver. Taking a deep breath, James slowly approached him, with Emily still clutching his hand. He crouched down to the child's level. "Hey there," he said softly. "What's your name?" The boy held his box tighter, saying nothing. James tried again, his voice gentle. "I'm James. And this is my daughter, Emily. We were just walking through the park." The boy's gaze shifted to Emily, then back to James. His voice was barely a whisper. "Noah. Noah," James repeated, the name feeling strangely significant. "That's a nice name. Where's your mom?" "Noah." He hesitated, then muttered, "At home. She's sick." James's chest tightened. He asked carefully, "Do you live far from here?" Noah looked down at his worn shoes. "We live in the basement apartment over on 43rd Street. Mama doesn't let me go far. But today, she was sleeping too long and there wasn't any food. So, I came out." "Do you have a dad?" James asked, his voice faltering mid-sentence. Noah shook his head. "Mama said he left before I was born." James felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. He tried to shake the impossible thought. But something in the boy's features made it impossible to ignore. His mind raced backward through the years, landing on a memory he had long since buried. 6 years ago. A woman who had worked briefly in his company. A kind, shy receptionist named Mary Carter. Blonde hair. Blue eyes. She had been fired under complicated circumstances, a mix-up with accounting files that had spiraled out of control. He remembered her being distraught. But she never fought the decision. She had simply vanished. Could it be? The name hit him like a ghost from the past. He reached into the small backpack he had slung over one shoulder, where Emily had insisted on bringing snacks. He took out a wrapped sandwich and held it out to Noah. "Here," he said gently. "You must be hungry." Noah looked at the sandwich, his eyes wide with a mixture of hunger and suspicion. He hesitated for a long moment before his small hand reached out and took it cautiously. "Thank you," he mumbled. James watched as the boy ate slowly, almost gracefully, as if he were afraid someone might snatch the food away. There was something heartbreaking in the way he made himself small, as if he was used to being invisible. Beside him, Emily sat down cross-legged on the grass and smiled. "Hi, Noah," she said brightly. "I like your eyes. They're just like mine." Noah looked at her, blinking. A faint, shy smile curled his lips. James's heart ached. He stood up and stepped back, trying to breathe. He glanced from Emily to Noah, then back again. The same eyes, the same shape of the face. The resemblance was undeniable. He reached for his phone and dialed his assistant. "Monica," he said, his voice tight with urgency. "I need you to find everything you can on a former employee. Mary Carter. She worked for us about 6 years ago. Start with HR records. I need everything you can get your hands on. Immediately." "Yes, Mr. Whitaker. I'm on it," Monica replied. Professional as always, asking no questions. James hung up and looked down at the two children. Emily was now showing Noah her stuffed bunny, talking to him with the easy familiarity of a lifelong friend. He knelt down again. "Noah," he said softly, "how would you feel about coming with us for a little while? Just to have a good meal and make sure you're okay. Then I promise I'll take you back to your mom." Noah stared at him for a long, silent moment. Then, clutching his sandwich and his cardboard box, he nodded. James stood, lifting Emily into his arms while placing a gentle hand on Noah's shoulder. He didn't know what he would find, or what truth lay buried in the past. But he knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that his life had just changed forever. And it had all begun with a little girl in a pink dress, pointing across a park and speaking the words he would never forget, "Daddy. That's my brother." The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, revealing James's penthouse apartment, a glass-clad sanctuary overlooking Central Park. Noah hesitated at the threshold, the gleaming marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows reflecting a world he'd only seen in movies. He clutched his tattered cardboard box as if it were the only thing grounding him. "Come in, buddy," James said gently. "You're safe here." Emily darted ahead, her curls bouncing as she ran through the wide hallway. "Come on, Noah," You have to see my room. It's pink and has stars on the ceiling. Noah stepped in slowly, his eyes wide as they scanned the polished floors, the towering windows, and the sparkling chandelier. It was a world far removed from the cracked sidewalks and leaky roofs of his own neighborhood. He followed Emily down the hall, still hugging the box to his chest. James watched them disappear into Emily's room before walking to his home office. He sat down at his mahogany desk and opened a locked cabinet. Inside were old company records, documents he hadn't touched in years. He pulled out the employee files and began flipping through them, his hand surprisingly unsteady. Until he found it, Mary Carter. He stared at the file. The photo stapled to the corner showed a young woman with golden hair and a warm, hopeful smile. She had been a receptionist for less than a year. He vaguely recalled the incidental misunderstanding over a client report, an argument with a junior manager. James had been tired, overwhelmed with work, and quick to take his manager's side. He had signed the termination papers without a second thought. He never saw her again. But there had been an email. Hadn't there? Or maybe more than one. Messages he had never replied to, flagged as follow-up and then buried under a mountain of contracts and board meeting agendas. She had tried to reach him. The pieces were falling into a horrifying picture. Mary Carter had left his company pregnant and alone. He found a recent address linked to her name on an old emergency contact form. It was in a rundown building in Brooklyn, known for cheap rentals and poor maintenance. James searched the address online and found images of cracked walls and graffiti-tagged doors. A pit of guilt grew in his stomach. Noah had been telling the truth. His mother was sick, raising him in poverty while James built skyscrapers and attended galas. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his face with both hands. He hadn't just forgotten her. He had dismissed her, discarded her when she might have needed him most. And now, there was a child. His child. He couldn't be 100% sure. Not yet. But in his heart, he already knew. That night, while Emily and Noah played with building blocks on the living room carpet, James made a phone call. He contacted a discreet charity organization that delivered aid to struggling families without revealing donors. He gave them Mary's address. "I want a full grocery order sent," he said, his voice firm. "Include fresh fruits, vegetables, meat, and medicine, vitamins, cleaning supplies. No branding. No notes. Just deliver it quietly." "Understood, sir," the representative replied. "It will be there by morning." He ended the call and returned to the living room. Emily had draped a blanket over 2 chairs, creating a makeshift fort. She crawled inside and pulled Noah in with her, giggling. "This is the castle. And you're the prince," she declared. Noah smiled a small, hesitant, but real smile. James felt a lump form in his throat. The way the boy responded to kindness. The way he looked at Emily as if she were the sun. The way his shoulders relaxed just slightly when no one raised their voice had seen this before. In people who had been forced to grow up too fast. James stood at the edge of the scene, a silent observer. He had to do more than send groceries. He had to face Mary. Ask for the truth. Tell her he was sorry. And be ready for whatever answer she gave him. The next morning, James dressed quietly while the children still slept. When they woke, he made them a breakfast of pancakes with fresh strawberries and orange juice. He told Emily they were going on a little adventure. Noah looked nervous. "Are we going far?" he asked. "Not too far," James said gently. "Just somewhere important." He packed a small bag for the boy, including some clean clothes and a new toy car Emily had insisted on giving him. As they stepped into the sleek black car, James's driver glanced at him in the rearview mirror, sensing the tension. "Where to, Mr. Whitaker?" he asked. James hesitated for just a second. "Brooklyn," he said finally. "I'll give you the address on the way." He sat back, staring out the window as the skyline of Manhattan's glittering wealth faded into the worn brick and rusted fire escapes of Brooklyn. His heart pounded in his chest. Today, he would face the past. Today, he would find out if the boy sitting beside him was truly his son. And if he was, James vowed silently, he would never let him go again. The car crawled through a narrow street lined with graffiti-covered buildings and neglected storefronts. James sat silently, watching the scenery shift from sleek glass towers to crumbling brick. He had driven past neighborhoods like this before. But today, every cracked sidewalk felt like a personal indictment. When they arrived, he stepped out onto the curb with Noah by his side. The boy clutched his small bag, his eyes scanning the peeling paint of the building that was his home. James took a deep breath and knocked on the faded green door of apartment 4B. After a moment, he heard footsteps, and the door creaked open. And there she was, Mary. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Her hair was pulled back in a tired bun, and her face was pale and thinner than he remembered. But it still held the quiet grace that James recognized instantly. "Noah," she gasped, relief washing over her face as the boy rushed into her arms. "Mama." Mary clutched him tightly, then looked up at James, her expression instantly turning to ice. "James, what are you doing here?" I need to talk to you," he said, his voice softer than he intended. "Emily, my daughter. She saw Noah in the park. She said he's her brother." I didn't believe it, Mary. "But I have to know the truth." Mary's jaw tightened. "You don't get to ask questions. Not after 6 years of silence. Please," James begged, his corporate authority dissolving into raw vulnerability. "Just give me a few minutes." She held Noah closer, her voice trembling with years of suppressed pain. "I was pregnant. I tried to tell you. I sent emails. I called your office. But no one ever let me through. Then you fired me. I had nothing. James. Nothing." James looked stunned, the truth of her words hitting him with the force of a physical blow. "Mary, I never saw any of that. I swear to you. I didn't know." She let out a bitter, humorless laugh. "Of course you didn't. You were too busy being important. I was 24 years old and terrified. Then I had Noah. And I raised him. Alone." James's throat tightened, the guilt clawing at him. "I'm so sorry. I should have asked. I should have looked for you." Mary shook her head. "You don't get to show up now and play the savior. Noah has a life. It isn't much. But it's ours. He swallowed the lump in his throat. Mary. Is he my son? She hesitated. Her defenses warring with the exhaustion in her eyes. Then, with a single tear tracing a path down her cheek, she nodded. Yes. But I don't want your money. James. I just want to protect him. James knelt, bringing himself to her level. I'm not here to take him from you. I'm here to help. To be his father. Mary's eyes were still wary. I don't know if I can forgive you. I understand. He said quietly. But please. Let me try. He reached into his coat and placed a thick envelope on the small table beside the door. This isn't for forgiveness. It's for Noah. For rent. For medicine. For food. I'll come back tomorrow. Mary picked up the envelope. Her fingers trembling. The hardness in her gaze faded. Just slightly. James added softly. Will you let me get a DNA test? Just so we can be sure. So I can do what's right. She hesitated again. Then gave a short, sharp nod. Fine. But that doesn't promise you anything. That's all I ask. James said. Standing up. He looked at Noah, who was still holding his mother's hand but was now staring at James with cautious curiosity. James reached out and gently touched Noah's shoulder. I'll see you soon. Okay. Noah gave a small nod. Then, without warning, he stepped forward and hugged James's leg for just a brief, fleeting moment. Mary said nothing. As James walked down the dimly lit hall, his heart heavier than it had ever been, he felt something else rise within him. Fragile but persistent, hope. The official report trembled in James's hand as he stood in his office, staring unseeingly out over the Manhattan skyline. He had read the words 3 times, but they still hit like a tidal wave. Probability of paternity, 99. 98%. Noah was his son. He exhaled slowly. The breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. His gaze fell on the photo on his desk, Emily grinning in her pink dress. He picked up his phone. 2 hours later. Noah stood at the threshold of the penthouse. Not as a guest, but as family. Emily ran to him, her face alight with joy. Noah. You're back. You're my big brother now. For real. She tugged him excitedly toward the living room. This can be your room now. Or we can build another fort. James watched them. A rare sense of peace settling in his chest. But the moment was short-lived. His phone began to buzz incessantly. News had broken. Millionaire's secret love child. James Whittaker's hidden past exposed. Whittaker heir found living in poverty. Paparazzi swarmed his building. His office was overwhelmed with calls. The board of directors demanded an emergency meeting. You should have handled this privately, James, said Leonard Chase, the board's chairman. His voice clipped and cold over the speakerphone. This is damaging public perception. The stock is slipping. This isn't a scandal, Leonard. James replied, his voice steely. This is my son. You're risking the company's reputation. Another board member chimed in. James's voice sharpened. If being a father is a risk to this company, Then maybe it's the company that's broken. Not me. He ended the call and stared out the window at the storm he had unleashed. Back inside. The opulence of the penthouse seemed to swallow Noah whole. He was quiet. Polite. But withdrawn. He sat alone during meals. Spoke in whispers. And often stared at the front door. As if waiting for a mother who wasn't coming tonight. James saw it all. Money could build walls of security. But it couldn't build trust. It couldn't build love. That evening. He tried something different. Noah. He said gently. Kneeling beside the boy. How about we make pizza tonight? Just us me. You. And Emily. Noah blinked. Make it? James nodded. From scratch. Emily clapped her hands. I want pepperoni flowers again. For the next hour. The sterile, pristine kitchen became a chaotic, joyful mess. They rolled out dough. Dusted each other with flour. And decorated their pizzas with olive smiles. For the first time since he'd arrived. Real, unrestrained laughter filled the penthouse. It finally felt like a home. After dinner, James brought out a shiny red bicycle. Identical to Emily's. This is for you. He said softly. You and your sister are a team now. Noah stared at the bike. Then at James. He didn't speak. But he nodded. His lips curling into the smallest, most genuine smile James had seen yet. Across the city. Mary sat on her worn couch. Scrolling through news articles on her phone. Images of James with Noah were everywhere. Her chest tightened. He looked genuine. But could he really have changed? Her phone buzzed. It was a text from James. Mary. I know this is a lot. But I want to do this right. For Noah. And for you. Please. Come visit. No pressure. Let's just figure this out. Together. She read the message again and again. She remembered all the lonely nights rocking Noah to sleep. Wondering if she had made the right choice in keeping him away. But now. That man, one who had broken her heart, had faced a media firestorm. Publicly accepted his son. And stood firm. Maybe. Just maybe. In the penthouse. Noah and Emily were curled up together under a blanket. A cartoon flickering on the screen in front of them. Noah's head rested gently on Emily's shoulder. His breathing deep and even. He was finally asleep. James stepped out onto the balcony. The cool night air a welcome relief. He had failed Mary and Noah once. Catastrophically. He vowed to the silent, watching city that he would not fail them again. Tomorrow. Mary would come. And he would be ready. Mary stepped out of the elevator. Her hands clenched so tightly around the strap of her purse that her knuckles were white. The penthouse doors opened. Revealing a warmth and light that felt a world away from her small apartment. The sound of children's laughter echoed from the living room. She hesitated. Her heart pounding. James greeted her not with a grand apology. But with a simple, soft smile. Mary. He said. Thank you for coming. She nodded stiffly. I'm here for Noah. Of course. James said. Stepping aside to let her in. Noah was sprawled on the floor beside Emily. Both children surrounded by puzzle pieces and crayons. He looked up. And his face lit up with pure joy. "Mama!" he cried, running into her arms. Mary knelt, hugging him tightly, burying her face in his hair. "How are you, sweetheart?" she whispered. "I like it here," he said. "Emily's funny. We're drawing planets." Mary managed a faint smile, but her eyes flicked toward James, still wary. As the children returned to their playing, James quietly offered her a cup of tea and motioned toward the sitting area. "Can we talk?" She sat down, her posture still guarded. "I've made some arrangements," James began, keeping his tone calm and factual. "For your medical treatment. I spoke with the lead physician at the Ridgeway Center. You'll have access to the best care. Anything you need. There will be no cost to you." Mary stiffened. "I didn't ask for your charity, James." "I know," he said gently. "This isn't charity. It's the bare minimum of what I owe you. For what I took from you all those years ago." She looked away, silent. "I also spoke to a partner company," he continued. "They have an opening on their communications team. It's a good position, with flexible hours. If you're interested, it's yours. No obligations." Mary raised an eyebrow, a spark of her old fire returning. "So now I owe you for a job, too?" "No," James said, his gaze unwavering. "You owe me nothing. I just want to help you build a life that isn't about just surviving. You deserve that." Mary stared at him, conflicted. She had imagined this meeting would be filled with pretense and hollow words. Instead, here he was, not asking for her forgiveness, but quietly trying to fix what had been so thoroughly broken. Later that evening, while she watched Noah play with Emily, something remarkable happened. Noah was building a tall tower of blocks. When it toppled over, Emily giggled, and James bent down to help him rebuild it. "Want to try again, champ?" he asked. Noah looked up at him, and without thinking, said softly, "Okay, Dad." James froze. So did Mary. The word hung in the air between them, momentous and fragile. Noah, completely unaware of the gravity of the moment, simply continued stacking blocks. James swallowed hard, not daring to speak. But his eyes met Mary's across the room, shimmering with an unshed emotion she couldn't quite name. The next morning, as Mary gathered her things to leave, she found a small, elegant box on the side table with a simple note. She opened it. Inside was a delicate silver necklace. The pendant was a single, engraved disc with two names etched into the surface, Noah and Emily. The note read, "So you always remember that whatever happens between us, we are still a family because of them." Her hands trembled as she closed the box. She walked into the kitchen, where James stood at the stove, preparing breakfast with the kids. She cleared her throat. "James," she said quietly, "I heard about my mother's hospital bill. The one that was paid off last week." James looked up, surprised. "I never told you she was sick," Mary continued, her voice steady. But you found out. And you helped. I didn't want to make a show of it. James said simply. I just wanted her to get better. Mary's voice finally cracked. You could have told me. He looked at her then. And his expression was open and honest. It wasn't about me. It was about what she means to you. Tears welled in her eyes. Why are you doing all of this? Because I failed you once. James said. His voice thick with regret. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure I never fail you. Or him. Again. Mary stood still for a long time. The sounds of the children laughing in the background filling the silence. Then. She nodded slowly. Noah can stay here for a while. She said. He seems happy. He deserves that. And you? James asked gently. I don't know yet. She replied honestly. But I'm willing to give you a chance to show me. James smiled. A real, hopeful smile that reached his eyes. He didn't push for more. As she left, Noah ran to the door and hugged her tightly. I'll be okay. Mama. He said. We're a team now. She kissed his forehead. Always. As the elevator doors closed, Mary held the necklace in her hand. Her fingers brushing over the engraved names. Maybe. Just maybe. Healing had begun. Years melted into a new, beautiful reality. The cold, glass penthouse was replaced by a warm, sunlit home nestled in the leafy suburbs outside New York City. The sprawling yard was always scattered with toys, sidewalk chalk drawings, and the echoes of laughter. A white picket fence bordered a garden where Emily's sunflowers grew tall and proud. And Noah tended to a small patch of tomatoes, insisting he wanted to grow real food for the family. Mary's bakery, Lucia's dream, was the heart of their new town. Locals lined up every morning for her famous cinnamon rolls. And the walls were a gallery of children's drawings, including many from Emily and Noah, who often did their homework at a corner table. James had transformed. He stepped back from the helm of his empire, trading boardrooms for school pickups and multi-million-dollar deals for impromptu dance parties in the kitchen. His world no longer orbited around stocks and figures, but around the two children who had remade his heart. Noah and Emily were inseparable. A perfect team. To them, there had never been a before. There was only this beautiful, unbreakable now. On a golden September afternoon, exactly 5 years after that fateful day in the park, James and Mary hosted a small celebration in their backyard. The picnic table was decorated with wildflowers, and soft music played from a speaker on the porch. Friends, neighbors, and family gathered to celebrate the anniversary of the day they all became one. James stood at the grill while Mary brought out a magnificent strawberry shortcake. Emily, now a graceful young girl, danced across the lawn, while Noah, thoughtful and kind, helped set the table. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, James tapped his glass. Thank you all for being here, he said, his voice filled with a deep, quiet gratitude. He looked at Mary, who stood beside him, her eyes glowing. 5 years ago, I was a man who thought he had everything. But in reality, I had nothing. My life was about to change in a way I never could have imagined. Today, I want to celebrate the heart of our home. The true source of all my wealth, our family. Just then, Noah and Emily came running forward. We have a surprise, Emily announced. They handed their parents a large, carefully folded piece of paper. When James opened it, his breath caught. It was a drawing. The crayon strokes full of life and color. Four figures: a man, a woman, a boy, and a girl held hands beneath a setting sun. Above them, in wobbly, joyful letters, were the words, "Our family forever." Mary's hand found James's, and their eyes met in a moment of perfect understanding. No words were needed. James leaned down and kissed the top of each child's head. Then he turned to Mary. "There's something I want to give you," he said softly. From his pocket, he took out a small velvet box. He opened it to reveal not a diamond, but a simple, elegant platinum band. Engraved on the inside were 4 names: James, Mary, Noah, Emily. "This isn't just a proposal," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "It's a promise. A promise that I will always be here. For all of you. That my home is your home. My heart is your heart. Always. Mary Carter. Will you marry me? And make our family complete?" Tears streamed down Mary's face as she nodded, unable to speak. "Yes." She finally whispered. "Yes. Of course. Yes." He slid the ring onto her finger. A perfect fit. As twilight settled over the yard, the 4 of them sat on the porch swing together. The children leaned against their parents, their eyes drooping with happy exhaustion. Laughter from their friends echoed as fireflies began to blink in the garden. James looked at his family, his heart so full it felt like it might burst. "We may have lost our way once," he said, his arm wrapped securely around Mary. "But we're never letting go again." Mary nodded, her head resting against his shoulder. And so their story came to its true beginning. Not with grand gestures or headlines, but with something far greater: a family. Whole and unbreakable. Under the fading light of a gentle sky, they simply held on to one another. A testament to the fact that love, real, patient, forgiving love, always finds its way home. Thank you for watching this deeply moving journey of love, redemption, and second chances. The story of James, Mary, Noah, and Emily is a powerful reminder that no matter how broken the past may be, forgiveness and compassion can build a future worth fighting for. If this story touched your heart, please show your support by liking, sharing, and most importantly, subscribing to Soul-Stirring Stories. We are dedicated to bringing you more real-life inspired tales that heal, inspire, and bring warmth to your soul. Because sometimes, the most powerful stories are the ones that remind us what it truly means to be family. We'll see you in the next story. Until then, take care, and keep your hearts open to the unexpected love you find along the way.